Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, your second chance to gain insight and advice from the best instructors featured on the Golf Smarter podcast. Great golf instruction never gets old. Our interview library features hundreds of hours of game improvement conversations like this that are no longer available in any podcast app.
What I try to teach when I teach stretching is the basic criteria of it. How your body is set up. It should be in alignment. You should be breathing easily. And the thing to remember is that what we're really trying to do when we stretch is to get the joints to glide. The only reason that we're trying to stretch is to get the muscle to lengthen across the joint so the joint can move the way it's supposed to. So if you kind of think of that, if a muscle's too tight and the joint goes try to move and the muscle's not lengthening, it's not going to turn. So you're going to try then to get that rotation somewhere else. And often we get it in places where we're not supposed to get it and we're not strong enough to get it. And we tend to overuse areas, and that's where injuries occur.
With another interview from the archives of Golf Smarter, here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Ann.
Thank you very much. It's great to be back again.
Yes, and we are more than just the podcast these days with you. We have just launched your first video on GolfSmarter TV. Yay, I know. It was a lot of fun doing that. And actually, I'm really pleased. I think it came out pretty good.
I was really, really happy with it. The points came across really well. I've been getting a lot of good feedback on it so far. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun doing that with you.
It really was a lot of fun. And we're going to be doing a couple more. And let's just give an overview of what we did. First of all, go to GolfSmarter.com, and you'll see on the homepage it says GolfSmarter TV. Just click on that, and it'll take you to our GolfSmarter TV page. Another way to do it, of course, is to just go to youtube.com/GolfSmarterTV, and you'll find Ann's video. Now, let's talk about what we did on the first video. And it's a great takeaway. This is what I like about it so much. It's something that you can watch, get it, and take it with you to the golf course. Go ahead and explain what we talked about.
Well, I wanted to pick a stretch, and that's what we did. Is I instructed people in how to do the hamstring stretch. And there's a big issue with hamstring stretching because most people say, I stretch my hamstrings all the time, and they're still tight and short. And why is that? And so I found that educating people about where the muscle actually is, the fact that it actually goes across two joints, so you have to stretch it differently than most people stretch it, and how you use your rest of your body in relationship to the hamstring when you stretch it. These are all factors that are very important. And the most important thing that often gets missed is that when you stretch, after you're finished stretching, it's really important to start to feel what it feels like to have the muscle in length. And that's what most people miss. They stand up, almost immediately put the muscle back into shortness, and so the stretch is a lot less effective. I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm just saying that if you have a more effective way of using it right away, and then again in your golf swing, so that's what we were showing is how you could do this on the golf course.
Why do you feel it was important to launch this with a hamstring stretch? Why is that an important stretch for golfers?
Well, again, one, because most people do it wrong, which is very frustrating for people. But secondly, the hamstring and shortness is really going to restrict the amount of rotation that you have in your lower body, and it's going to affect the golf swing a lot. Two different things. One, you're not going to get much rotation because the hips and pelvis are kind of locked in when the hamstring is short. And secondly, the hamstring and shortness can cause a lot of low back and leg pain. And so that often also contributes to having problems with your golf swing.
Is it better for players who walk or ride, or does that not make any difference?
It really doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's the same thing. Whether you're walking or riding, you still need to think about how to keep this muscle in length. So when you're walking, when the hamstring's in length, you're going to be able to walk in a little more forward alignment. When you're sitting in the golf cart, it's really important when you sit down to not let your pelvis slump down and back because that puts the hamstring into shortness. So you need to be aware of even as you sit or walk that it's going to contribute to your next golf swing. So you have to be much more cognizant about keeping the muscle in length after you stretch it.
My main takeaway from this, and that's why we use it in the title, is that you believe that with the proper hamstring stretch and frequent hamstring stretches, especially pre and during your round, and even post, that you're gonna reduce pain. And where would that be?
Well, I mean, there can be a number of different places that you have pain if the hamstring is tight. You can have it in your knees. You can have it in your hips because it crosses both those joints. But because it attaches to the sit bones and the pelvis, it actually can pull the pelvis down and back, which then puts pressure and tightness into your low back muscles as well. And so you can have low back pain, you can have hip pain, you can have the back of your leg pain, and you can have knee pain. So a lot of things can happen with the hamstring being in shortness.
And I'm sure there are many people who are listening right now nodding their head going,
yes,
that's me.
Yes, and it's really remarkable because when in my clinic at the Marin Golf Fitness Center, when I teach this, I mean, people's eyes light up because they, for the first time, actually get what it's supposed to be doing. And now that they're effective, they can use it more consistently. And that's really what we want to do with stretching, is that we don't want to just stretch and hope our body figures out what it's supposed to do with it. We really want to have a game plan around what we're trying to do with our body, and then get the stretching and the strengthening programs that you're using to help your body move to this new alignment and more length and more strength.
And what I'm excited about is the fact that we can go over what the stretch is here, but having the visual,
yes,
made it a lot, and doing it succinctly made it a lot better. The other element is not only less pain, but you contend that with a good hamstring stretch and looser hamstrings, you're going to get more power.
Exactly. And often, because what people don't often realize is that the muscles can be in shortness differently on each leg and even on each part of each leg. And so it can pull the pelvis into an asymmetrical pattern. As well as being tight, it can kind of torque you or tilt you. And you often see this is that golfers are often, especially right-handed golfers, are shorter and tighter on the right side because of the way that they use their body. And so if it stays in shortness, every time that you swing, it's not allowing the pelvis to move through. So there's really no way to get power. And what you'll see with people who do this, and I see it all the time in my practice, is that they overuse their upper body because they just can't get the lower body to move.
Well, this is an audio podcast, and let's just go ahead and do the hamstring stretch right now. Let's get a sense of it if we can, and walk me through it and we can stand up if we need to.
Okay.
And explain to me what we're doing and why.
Okay. So when you do the hamstring stretch, the most important thing is to know where the hamstring is. So it attaches when you're sitting. You can feel this a lot. The two bones in your butt. They're called sit bones. So that's where it starts, and then there's two of them behind each leg, and they go down the back of your leg on either side. They actually cross the knee joint, and they attach to the lower leg. So understanding where that is very important, because when it's tight, it actually locks your knees back and it tucks your butt under. So when you do the stretch, it's important to kind of play with both those joints at the same time to get them to work together. So when you start the stretch, you're going to stand up, you're going to put your foot up onto something that's not too high. One of the biggest mistakes that people make is they put their legs up really high, and then you're not going to get an effective stretch. So
when you say put your leg up really high, you mean your foot?
Yeah, your foot.
So you're extending?
Right. So a lot of times you'll see people, like if there's a bench, it would be better for you to put your foot on the seat of the bench, not the back of the bench, because that's really too high. Because
so you don't want to stretch that out as far as you can immediately.
No.
Oh,
because
wow.
the problem with this is that when you stretch a muscle, there's actually a little monitor in there that monitors muscle stretch. And if you overstretch a muscle, what happens is that monitor says this is an unsafe stretch and actually tells the muscle to shorten and contract. So here you are stretching a muscle that's contracting. This is not what you want to do. It tends to cause little micro tears in the muscle and cause a scar tissue to form. But it also doesn't teach your body what it is that you actually are trying to do in the stretch.
So critically important.
So critically important. And so what you want to do is that when you do the setup, you want to make sure that your body is set up so the stretch is done accurately at the right length. And then you can be much more effective with it. So you don't want to overstretch. You only want to take it to where you very first feel the stretch.
Actually, before we continue on, why don't you hydrate for a second?
Thank
because
you.
I have to break here for a commercial because this podcast episode is brought to you by and Grassel. Let's talk more about other programs we're going to do together. We actually are going to do a couple more videos to put on Golf Smarter TV.
We are. And again, to have things that you can take away with you. The two that I've decided on that I think is most important is that what gets missing in most people's repertoire is really working on stretching. So upper trunk stretches for rotation, these are things I just did with Fred earlier today, made a big difference for his back. Just very simple things to do that you can do on the golf course, you can do while you're sitting at your computer. These are really important things to be able to have available to you all the time. And then the second one we're going to do is lower body stretches for rotation.
Which will actually be our third.
Our third, yes. I'm sorry. So it'll be the third one that we're going to do in the series. And again, rotation is often the part that's missed for people. It's often the part that is the weakest because we don't tend to strengthen it. If you think about your strengthening program, a lot of times people are just doing things in two planes. They're not really doing a lot of rotational exercise. And so,
which is really fascinating, especially for people who play golf.
Right.
You want to do the full three-dimensional.
You bet. And they're moving towards that more and more now. But it's interesting with like when they talk about core exercise, a lot of it still, is about sort of this two-dimensional effect. And we really need to engage the core and then be able to rotate around it. And these stretches will really help with that a lot.
So let's talk about these stretches. Let's, again, and this is to increase rotation.
Right.
So that will free you up to more power.
Right. Less pain. Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And, so the whole idea with stretching, again, is that when I teach stretches, what I try to do is that if you look in any book or you get online, there's lots and lots and lots and lots of stretches. And the things that you need to start to consider is what is it that you really need to stretch? So this is often some of the criteria that don't actually get assessed. It's like, how do you know what you need to stretch and where you need to stretch more and where you don't need to stretch as much so that you're being effective again in what you're doing. And then the other thing to consider is how do you do the stretch effectively and how do you feel what the changes are in your body? And so what I try to teach when I teach stretching is the basic criteria of it, how your body is set up. It should be in alignment. You should be breathing easily. And the thing to remember is that what we're really trying to do when we stretch is to get the joints to glide. And so that's the whole thing. I mean, the only reason that we're trying to stretch is to get the muscle to lengthen across the joint so the joint can move the way it's supposed to. So if you kind of think of that, if a muscle's too tight and the joint goes try to move and the muscle's not lengthening, it's not going to turn. So you're going to try then to get that rotation somewhere else. And often we get it in places where we're not supposed to get it and we're not strong enough to get it, and we tend to overuse areas, and that's where injuries occur. Not only injuries, but loss of power. So if you can't sequence your rotation, then, if your pelvis doesn't rotate, you're going to overdo with the upper body, or you're going to see a sway or a slide. You're going to see a lot of the dysfunction that you see in the golf swing dynamics. So it's so important to learn the basics of it so that you can go and pick a stretch and know how to do it, whether or not it's the stretch I teach you or not. And then the other part of stretching that people miss is that many stretches, the muscles, there's a whole lot of muscles. So I was telling Fred today that just in the hip, there are muscles that do what we call external rotation or turn the legs out. There's actually 6 of them, and they lay kind of in this array of muscles. So when you do the stretching, you need to know how to not just do it one direction, but you may want to change directions a little bit so that you can try to access these other muscles that may be tight. And if you only do one direction, you may not be getting the ones that you're really trying to get.
One of the things that fascinates me about golf and golfers is that any age, any body style, any body type can play. It just kills me when I see people out there who, you have people who are in decent condition, and then you see people who are 50, 75, 100 pounds overweight, right, and who and swing the club very hard.
Right.
And have said, I've never had any pain in my life. I've played golf for my whole life. I used to be, when I was a young man, I was in great shape. As I've gotten older, I just love my beer too much. Right. And I'm sedentary, but I go out and play golf, and I've never experienced any pain. I hate them.
Yeah.
I really do. But how are we able to not convince them, but open their eyes to the fact that even if you're not out there to lose weight and you're not out there to build your cardio,
right, that
stretching and flexibility is so important to their golf game. I mean, if there's nothing more important than that to them,
right. Or to their life. I mean, this is the reality. Yeah.
Right. They don't care.
Yeah.
Or they wouldn't be in that position. Right. But
so some things that happen is that a lot of times people who were athletic knew how to use their bodies well. Mm-hmm. And so that pattern often doesn't change. They still have that ability to track or to sequence or whatever happened and when they were younger, and they still can maintain it, which is part of the reason why they can do it. Another reason, sometimes people are just lucky. It's sort of like the stories you read. Oh yeah,
you talk about hating people.
Yeah,
I'm back.
You say, oh, the guy's 97 years old and he's been smoking since he's been 12 and doesn't have lung cancer. Well, the probability is, if it was anybody else, they'd be dead. So it's the same thing with people who are lucky that way, is that it's kind of like they're waiting for the straw that breaks the camel's back. They may be fine, but then, one day, and I see this all the time in my practice as a physical therapist, they'll go, actually a friend of mine just said that, leaned over, picked up my clubs to put it into the cab to go back to the airport, popped a muscle, and this happens whether it's the low back. He happened to do it in his arm muscle, his bicep. Actually, I think he tore off part of it.
Yikes.
Yes, but this is the way it happens, is that you're setting yourself up for the potential of having really bad problems. And it may be fine, it may be fine, it may be fine, but you're actually not fine. And then eventually something will happen. You'll just turn the wrong way. You'll go out and garden too hard on one day, and you'll come back in, and then it's kind of all over. And then you have to recover from injury, and then you have to... Now, when you've gotten that far into the pattern, that's what I call a dysfunctional pattern, and it's now caused the problems, you got to take a lot of time to undo it. Whereas if you intervene with it a little bit all the time, so if you do your stretching,
you're a
little more proactive. We're not talking tons. We're just talking some. If you're a little more proactive, then you actually start to intervene with that pattern so much earlier, and there's so much less probability that you're going to get into this big problem because you've actually been doing things, And people get hurt and they come in, they go, well, I stretch and I do this, and then I watch them and they're not effective in what they're doing. They don't quite understand what they're doing, or their body doesn't really know how to use it very well. And that's part of the other thing that I teach in my clinic, is I teach people how to sit, stand, and walk differently so that you can actually keep all the changes in your body. As Fred's raising his hands here, because we were just talking about this again. But, it's so...
And sleep.
And sleep, and use pillows, and maybe you need to change the way you sit in your car, or even in the I always watch the golfers in the golf carts, and I'm always kind of smirking because they're sitting there in compression, the hamstrings are short, and then they get up and they rotate, and they create forces that are the same as professional baseball players, but they're not training like professional baseball players. So you got to see that at some point this could really, really, really be problematic. So being more proactive, learning how to use your body more effectively, making sure that your chairs and your shoes and all the things that you're in your environment are supporting you being in a better alignment is really going to make the difference. And that's where you can intervene. And it's not like go to the gym for 6 hours a week, every week. This is some ways that you can do it all the time in your life.
You've been on the show before, and for a listener who's new to the Golf Smarter podcast, even though you've been a physical therapist for more years than we are going to admit
We're
here.
not talking about that.
Yeah, exactly. But you also have been through the Titleist Performance Institute training.
Exactly.
And how has that... Plus, you've also been a golfer for many years.
Yes.
I mean, it's one thing to be a physical therapist, and I've met people who are physical therapists and fitness instructors, And they want to teach you about golf, but they're not golfers. Right. They don't get it.
Right.
You get the golf part. So you've instituted Titleist Performance Institute's
golf fitness program.
I just got caught because I was redundant there from the Department of Redundancy Department. But you've gone through their training. You do their program.
Right. And
how has that enhanced your practice as a physical therapist and also incorporated what you're doing for golf? What does TPI do for you there?
Well, the TPI program is really great. So what it did was I've looked at movement for a long time, but it actually gave me very succinct parameters that I'm looking at with golfers. So the first thing I do is I videotape the golf swing from 2 different positions, face on and down the line, and I look at for 12 common golf swing faults. So I'm looking at all these golf swing faults. Now, I'm not looking at them for the same reason that a golf pro would be looking at them. I'm looking at them because if your body is in some of these dysfunctional patterns that I talked about, it actually creates the golf swing fault. And so you can try changing your swing, but if you don't actually know what it is in your body that's causing the golf swing faults, it's really hard to change your swing. So if you're doing a sway or slide...
And that's what a certified instructor, PGA instructor, is going to do. He's just going to try to adjust your swing.
Exactly.
He doesn't care about your body type and what your limitations are.
Right. And I've seen this over and over again. I had one pro with a woman I was working with, and he goes, she can't get her hands through. And I'm like, yeah, she can't get her hands through because her body was in compressed position. There was no way she could get her hands through, but he kept trying to teach her how to get her hands through. Well, and I'm like, but she can't do it. So those are the things that get very frustrating. So the work that I do through the
she's just physically incapable.
Exactly. And got hurt. So she would do something, what we call a chicken wing. So since her body was compressed down, the only way she could get through was to bring her shoulders and her left arm up and kind of pull up and through because she couldn't get her hands through because her body was so compressed down. So
are you saying that a lot of people have the yips because of body problems? Not because of their swing?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then it turns into a mental thing. But really the yips are...
Yes.
Wow.
I mean, I see this with guys, especially with people who putt, and they're like, oh, I have the yips, and I'm looking at them, and it's like, their body's just they're not weight shifting well, they're not engaged in core, they're not breathing, so their body's not in aligned position, so that arm can work in that little triangle, swing really easily, and I see this on the course all the time when I'm playing as well. I watch people. I try not to too much anymore. But, I see this all the time. So the first part of the Titleist program is doing the video evaluation of the golf swing. And then the second part is actually doing a physical screening. So I do a number of tests to look at the restrictions in range of motion, flexibility, balance, which is a big part. So many people are off balance. One of the tests we do is you have to close your eyes and hold one leg up in the air for how many seconds. And most people can't do it for even 5 seconds with their eyes closed. So it's very telling. And if you don't have good balance, you can't really do your golf swing very well. So we go through this whole series of tests that I do with clients. And then the last part of that is that information gets plugged into the Titleist website from me. And it generates an exercise program that specifically addresses the physical problems that I assessed. And when those physical problems get remedied, then that corrects the golf swing faults. So there's a consistent approach to what you're doing to make your golf swing more effective by addressing the issues that are restricted in your body or your balance or your strength issues.
That's valuable for, and I do have listeners who do live here in Marin County in Northern California, but we're talking to people who are not necessarily in Marin County, and they're all over the country. As a matter of fact, they're all over the world. How can they take advantage of what you have to offer without you taking videotape of them?
Well, this is a great program. So again, through the Marin Golf Fitness Center, I offer an at-home golf fitness evaluation.
There you go.
So what happens is, again, this is through the Titleist program. So you contact me through a link that will be on the Golf Smarter podcast page. And what I do is I send your email into the TPI website, and then you will get a link, and you will be able to go in and do your own fitness evaluation. So it's
and I've done this,
and yes, and you really liked it. Right?
I really liked it because they incorporate video, and they do an excellent job of incorporating video and making it really easy to understand how to do that. They're basically saying, "Can you do this?"
Right.
And it's like, well, what do you mean, can I do that? And then they show you what it is. Oh, can I do that with you? And if you can, you click yes or no, basically, or kind of.
Right,
you know, like
exactly. So, and that's what's so great about it is it's a video of each test, and you can actually turn it off and rerun it and do it again. So if you don't get the test the first time, there's usually written words about the test as well, so you can read it, you can see the video, and then it's very clear your choices. Yes, I can turn this way. No, I can't turn that way. I can turn both ways. I can't turn either way. And you click on that, and then that gets to go into the Titleist website, and after you do your own testing. Now, as an added feature, if you have a video, they actually take you through the golf swing analysis as well. So you can do this all yourself at home, and then it generates an exercise program. And when you get the exercise program to that portion, you get to pick what days you want to get it sent to your email, how many reps you want to do, and then you'll get that, and it'll have a video of each exercise and how many times to do it. So again,
TPI is a great program.
It's a great program. I mean, really, I'm so impressed with it. And the ones that they teach you are specific to what you need right at that point. And what's so great about this, so now you have a clear parameter of what's going wrong. You have a way to do the exercises that are very specific for what you have for your problems. And then you can start to, when you finish with the whole exercise program, you can go and reevaluate yourself and go, oh yeah, before I couldn't turn either way, and now I can turn both ways. And so now you may have to work on another part, or this may be enough to get you going, and then you can continue with these exercises either at home or if you go to the gym. But it gives you really very clear instructions and a way to really see your progress. And that's one of the biggest problems is that, I just saw something the other day and they go, oh, women golfers need to strengthen and they need to do core. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
And how do you even know if what you're doing is what you should be doing? And how do you know if what you're doing is actually being effective? So this is a great way, a consistent way. And then also when you go in and you order this, you also have access to me. So you can email me, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And
one of the things that I liked about their evaluation while you're doing the at-home evaluation is I don't have a laptop. I have a desktop computer.
Right.
I didn't need a golf club. I didn't need a lot of space to do this. They're not asking you to put a golf club in your hand and see how much you can. No, these are just things you can just set right in front of your computer and do it.
Right.
And there's sometimes you need to get on the floor and do that, and that's all fine.
And you can pause the video, and this is what I did because, when I before I offered this, I went through it several times myself. And, you pause the video, you get on the floor, and you go, what did they tell me to do? So then you just rerun the video, you look at it again, and it becomes very clear, what it is that you're doing. And, sometimes it's kind of hard to see, so you may even want to have a mirror nearby and actually see, because sometimes your body's telling you you're doing something that you're not actually doing, right? You might be leaning the wrong way, huh, Fred?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Kind of pushing it too far. Right. And thank you so much for coming back. Also, we remind everyone, go to GolfSmarterTV, check out the first video on Hamstring Stretch, and keep your eyes open. And I'll let you know, we're going to have 2 more coming up over the next couple months, more stretches. And if you need to remind yourself how to do it, we're on YouTube at youtube.com/GolfSmarterTV, or, of course, at GolfSmarter.com. Ann?
Thank you so much.